In this video, we'll learn how to use Excel to run correlational analysis using the Data Analysis Tool Pack and an Excel formula. We'll also learn how to construct and modify a scatterplot. The first step is to make sure you input all of your data. Remember, with correlations, we're looking at a pair of variables or the relationship between two variables. So in column A, I have a set of reading scores, and in column B, a set of math scores. Each row represents an individual. So for example, this individual scored a 645 in reading and a 676 in math. So the first step is to go to Data at the top. We're going to go all the way to the right to Data Analysis. And then we're going to select Correlation and hit OK. For the input range, we want to make sure we grab all of our cells. So we're going to go all the way here again from A1. My cursor is in A1. Click and drag all the way down to B17. We want to make sure Grouped By is in columns. We're going to check Labels in first row because I selected row 1, which includes here the reading and math label, and the output option should be on New Worksheet Ply. Then I'll hit OK. So on a new sheet, you can see here sheet 2, Excel has given us the correlation in a matrix. Here's the correlation. Remember, we can go to Home and Numbers here to change the decimal place to 0.65. Okay, so that is how you run correlations using the Analysis Tool Pack. If we come back here to our raw data, we can also use the Excel formula. I'm going to pick a blank cell. This is cell D2. And in here, I'm going to type the equal sign. And I'm going to type the formula for correlations, which is CORREL. And Excel starts to populate it automatically. If I click this, it's going to ask me to input array 1, comma, array 2. Array 1 just stands for the scores, or our first variable. So this time I'm going to put my cursor in A2. We are not grabbing the label. We're just going to grab the data. So in A2, I'm going to click and drag all the way down to A17. And you can see here, here's my first array, array 1, A2 to A17, comma. Put my cursor now in B2 and click and drag all the way down to B17. This is my array 2. Then I can put the parentheses and hit enter. And here's our correlation. Same thing, we can come to, we can select this, come to Home, and then click here to change the decimal place to 0.65. And you can see that it's the same as the analysis output. Okay, so the next step is to construct the scatter plot. What we want to do is grab all of our data. So I'm going to put my cursor in A1, click and drag all the way down to B17. Now I go to Insert, the top. We're going to navigate to Charts and click on the scatter plot, which is this y-x axis with the dots in it. I'm going to select the first one, the scatter. Click. So here we have a chart. As it stands, it's actually not very helpful or useful or user-friendly. You can't tell what the data is, and it's also really scrunched up at the top here. We're not making use of all this the white space below. So what we want to do is modify it. To modify, if you click on a chart, you'll notice it toggles on the chart tools up here at the top, and there's something that says Design, a little tab under. If we go to the far left, you can see there's something called Add Chart Elements. So if we click on this, it gives you different options or different tools that we can toggle off and on and edit. So you can see the chart title, it's already on, above chart, it says math right now. We might also want to add axes titles. So I'm going to click the primary horizontal, primary vertical, which basically adds text boxes for us to edit and move around. I'm going to edit the title first, and to do that you can just double click inside. I'll say this is reading and math scatterplot. You can also say the relation between reading and math scores. This is the reading scores. And here is our math scores. Okay, so you can see, you can click, you can drag and move these around. This got it off-centered. You can also do things like if I highlight all of it and go back to Home at the top, we can change the font. to something that we like. We can change the color. We can bold them. Just edit to get it to how you like. Ooh, this one moved again. Try to center it. Okay, so now let's address the fact that we have all this white space here. What we want to do is modify the y-axis. To do that, I can right-click on the axis, and on the y-axis again, so I'm just right-clicking, and I'm going to select Format Axes at the bottom. When I do that, it triggers here this right nav bar, and what we want to look at is the bounds. So the bounds tell us, what's the minimum number, what's the maximum number, and what units do we want to use to space them. So I'm going to select the minimum and edit this, because right now the minimum's at 0, which is right here. Because it's at 0 and our range goes all the way to 800, again, we're not really using this white space. It's pulling the data up. So I'm going to change this to 500. I change it to 500 and look what happens. It's no longer at 0 and it pulls the data down, so I can see the spread of the data a lot more easier. And this is good. This is what we want. Okay. It's looking better. Now, I might want to get rid of these gray grid lines in the back. I think they're a little distracting and you don't really need them for a scatter plot. So I'm just going to click and highlight, and you can see I clicked on the vertical ones and it triggers these blue dots at the top. That's how you know, oh, and at the bottom, but that's how you know that you've selected the grid line. And I'm just going to hit delete on my keyboard. Same thing with these. I'm going to select them. You can see that they're highlighted by the blue dots on the left and the right, and I'm going to delete on my keyboard. Much, much cleaner. Okay, we might also want to change the color of these markers, these little dots. To do that, if I right click on them, it triggers this fill. I can change the color right here to, let's say, I don't know, let's do a light blue for the fill, the outline. Ooh, see, it adds that line. We can say no outline. We have these light blue dots. Another thing we might want to do is add a trend line. So if I click on the chart again, go to Chart Tools, Design at the top, add a chart element, go to trend line here, and then linear. We want to add a linear trend line. Let's select this. And it adds our linear trend line in the blue dots. We often use solid lines to depict trend lines, so let's edit this. If I right click on the trend line, I can go Format Trend Line. And this pulls up again that right nav bar that we can edit. So if I go here to this little bucket, this allows me to change the dash type, which right now is on the round dots, but let's do solid. There you go. And then we can also change the color. I'll use yellow. You can also change the width, make it bigger. All right, so there's our trend line. The last thing we might want to do is add our R squared. So to do that, we can right click again on the trend line, Format Trend Line, make sure we have this right gray nav bar up, and at the very bottom we see Display R squared value on chart. Let's select this, and here is the R squared. So now we've created a scatter plot that we can easily see and read. We can see how the data vary, how the relation between the data to this trend line. We see the R squared, we see what the variables are, and we have a title. This is how you create a scatter plot in Excel.